In the lane going up from the Masonic Hall, between the lane between James Street and Dunbar Street, Willie Ritchie ran his joiners and undertakers business. Ritchie's built a lot of houses in the town, and they built the bridge across from the sea town to the East Beach, and then refurbished it in 1951. In the square, these top two shops never seemed to be terribly successful. I only ever remember the top one being a kind of gift and crockery shoppy run by Peter Murray, Pete Moe. I don't remember MD ever being in the second one. And this was turned into a shop after I left Lossie. This was turned into a shop which was a barber shop, Ritchie. Later on, Isabel Nelson and then later Jenny Bowley ran it as dress shops. This was Johnny Anderson, the baker's, Johnny for fancies. He made excellent fancy cakes. Very well turned out bakers with polished granite on the front. Johnny had an electric vehicle in the days when we didn't know that that was ecological or green or anything. Oh, I liked this because this was a chip shop for many years, and later on it became Willie Lawson's paint and china shop. But when it was a chip shop, we used to rush there from the picture house. On a Saturday, I got a shilling, and it was 8p for the pictures at that time, left you with 4p, and dashed across there to get a fish and a pennyworth. That was your 4p gone. Many years later, about 3 years ago, I went into the chip shop round the corner and bought a fish supper, which was the fish and a pennyworth, and it cost £4. So it had changed from 4p to £4, an increase of 240 times. John Street, we had Ian Smith. Ian came to Lossie after the war, and he was a plumber, an electrician, and he opened this shop and sold plumbing goods, white goods, and then washing machines and fridges in the days when we were just learning about washing machines and fridges. That was, from 1950 onwards, more or less. It was single story when it was built and then expanded upwards. Another dairy, Sandy Scott, he used to sell the Sunday papers as well. For the back of Sandy's, these bungalows were built on what had been a line of sheds belonging to Jimmy MacDonald, who was a carter. Jimmy MacDonald, who was a carter, or as we would say now, in transport. Carts, and had horses. There were none left there by my time. But he had tucked away a horse-drawn hearse. And the funny thing is that last week I was up in Elgin, and there was a horse-drawn hearse lying at the door of the Catholic kirk there. If we go through Jimmy MacDonald's yard, we come to Commerce Street we called it, and that was Jimmy Dougal's shop there. He was a baker, made excellent buttery rolls, and the big decision was whether to buy Jimmy's buttery rolls or go up and get Robbie Thompson's toenails. When he died, his son Patty moved down to the High Street, and we'll come to that later. Across from Jimmy's was the ropery to us. It had been built by Peterkin, the ship's chandler, to make ropes for the sailboats. And when they started to move away from the sailboats, the ropes weren't long enough and the place closed down. It was demolished and only the boiler remained in my day. Janet's shop. Janet had this little shoppy for a long time after the war. Before the war, her folk had been in the other shop along Commerce Street, and that was taken over after the war by Plymley, and it was quite a successful shop till he moved up to the head of the hill to a new shop. Across the road from that was a little cafe, Danny's Cafe. Danny was from down the coast, came and ran this successful cafe with hot drinks. Hot orange was the big thing then. And pie and beans and so on. Alexander's other shop, other big shop, down in Commerce Street, and that supplied all this area down here. Across from Alexander's was this licensed grocer. Peter Lipp had it eventually. Next door, the building had actually been a pub at one time, the Star Inn, and underneath, I seem to remember there was a ladies' clothing shop, and I've got a sneaking feeling there was some kind of tradesman in it afterwards, maybe a plumber for all I know. Further along Commerce Street was the British Legion. It had been rebuilt after the war to provide a meeting place for the men who'd been together in the services. There was no naval or certainly no Air Force equivalent at the time. And it was very successful for a long time, had a big dance hall, and it was quite popular for wedding dances. The bottom corner was the original office of Alec Campbell, AMG Campbell, a fish salesman. He moved along to Shore Street later. His secretary was my cousin Nellie MacLeod, and I used to go in to see them. The next shop was George Galt, and that was knocked down some time ago and is being replaced by a new building. George Galt owned that, and that had been rebuilt after a big fire which took this whole corner away. It was rebuilt, of course, as the mission. During the war, it was the kitchen for the soldiers, and they knew it as Hell's Kitchen. Across from the Legion, these three buildings were very important in my day. Eventually they became Seagull Fish Processing, where Peter Galt ran this very successful business. But before that, the top one had been Dave Sutherland's. The top two had been Dave Sutherland's. Dave was a Hopeman man who came and started an engineering business, and eventually produced winches, manufactured winches, which were exported all over the world. Somebody told me recently that they had seen one in use in South America. This was all knocked down and replaced by a block of flats, and that's fairly typical of the way things are going in Lossie. Shore Street, this was the joiner shop of Sanny Hard, when my brother John joined as an apprentice, followed immediately by Stuart Imlach, who went on to become a Scottish international footballer. But Sanny Hard sold the business when he retired to Josie Bakey, and when Josie retired it became Bobby Conti's. Before all the joinery, it had actually been a smithy, and Peter Thompson made the railings for the rail and bray there, made by hand, of course, hand and eye. This was a square, really uninteresting building which never seemed to have anything happen in it. It was rescued a few years ago and a ridge roof put on it, and is now the home of, I think, 2 families in there. I only knew it as the place which had been a cooperage, and the cooper was Jimmy Robb, a little fella on the right side there. He had a hunchback, and we used to go in and chat to Jimmy. Boys did that in those days, but it was before television. They were our entertainment.